So this happened to me about 5 years ago when I was 18. I had decided to take a break from my longtime high school boyfriend after graduation because he was 2 years older than me and just a complete control freak. I was hanging out with my friend Jenna most of the time, not really doing much other than smoking weed and hanging out with all of our friends, when life was simple. To set the story, I'm a petite blonde, and not to sound in any way overly confident, but especially back then, I was pretty good looking at the time, meaning that I was in shape and dressed pretty well. I'm just a lazy mom now. So from time to time, I would, like any other girl, get creepy Facebook messages from random strangers, basically just telling me I was pretty or that they wanted to take me out. One day though, when my friend Jenna and I were sitting at her friend Tommy's house, I saw that I had received a Facebook message from this guy named Chadley, who was apparently an Abercrombie model. And let me tell you, this man was in tip-top physical shape. Like, he was one of those guys that stood outside of the Abercrombie stores with his shirt off. Not my type at all, but I mean, I wasn't not going to talk to a hot guy. But anyways, basically Chadley sent me a message saying,
"Hey, you look really familiar. Have we met before?"
So it was a bit of a different approach than all of the other men who would always come on strong at first. Mind you, I wasn't really looking for a boyfriend or really to talk to any guys. I guess at the time I was just kind of happy to get the attention. I feel like that kind of thing can really boost anyone's self-esteem. So the conversation goes as followed. No, I don't think I've ever met you.
"Maybe I just saw you at a party or something. I just saw your Facebook and you look so familiar and you're really gorgeous. I just had to ask."
Oh my gosh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Then we started to conversate about what schools we were from, our exes, and so on. At the time, I was really interested in cars. My entire family works in that industry, and I was telling him what my dream car would be. He seemed nice and somewhat normal at first. He eventually asked me to come hang out at his house, and he lived in a very upscale town and neighborhood. So I thought to myself, hell, why not? I mean, it's not like I'm doing anything else that's productive with my time. So I head over to his house around 8 p.m. on a really cold, wintry evening. As soon as I arrive, he greets me at the door. He then leads me into what looks like a poorly put together office. Inside, he pulls up his computer screen, and he literally had YouTube pulled up, and in the search bar was fast cars. And he was pretty much showing me a video of just a car going really fast. Like, cool dude, but why are you showing me this? I proceeded to act amused by it, and then he asked me if I wanted to watch a movie with him. I accepted, and he put something in. But just the whole vibe from him was just really weird. But at the same time, I guess I kept ignoring the red flags because of how good looking he was. So after the night was over, I said goodbye and then I left, promising to link up again with him soon. He literally texts me not even seconds after I walk out the door.
"Hey, text me when you get home."
Okay, so I get home and I tell him I'm safe and good night, and then he just insists on keeping the conversation going.
"So what are you doing tomorrow?"
Probably nothing after school.
"Would you want to go out to eat?"
Okay, sure. Yeah, that sounds cool. So once again, I head over to his house later in the evening and we get in his beat up Honda and we drive to an Outback that was nearby. So we walk inside and then we have to sit down as there was a wait. And he just keeps looking at his phone, like he's waiting for something. Finally it lights up and he then gets a call from a friend.
"Hello? Yeah, man, I can't talk about football right now. I'm on a date." "Yeah, man, it's the girl I was telling you about." "Okay, I'll call you back later."
Then he hung up. Still getting some really weird vibes from him, I just proceed with the date. Something about this guy is just really off, and it felt like he was trying to move really fast with me. All I could think about was just going home and not talking to him anymore. He just wasn't my type. So once we get back to his house, he then asked me if I wanted to come inside. Sorry, but I think I need to get home. It's getting pretty late and I'm really tired. He looks upset and then he says,
"Oh, come on. Just come in for a second. I want to show you something cool."
Red flag, but my younger self was pretty much down for whatever, so I just said, sure, fine. Show me what you want to show me. We walk inside and we are instantly, and I mean almost if they're standing right on the other side of the door waiting for me, instantly greeted by this guy's mom and dad. "Oh, hi Chadley, is this the girl you keep talking about?" "What? I literally met this guy 2 days ago, and he's already talking about me to his mom?"
"Yeah, she's really great."
Then his dad says, "Well, we'll leave you two alone. Hey, check out his swimming pictures on the mantle. He's a really awesome swimmer." "Okay, nice to meet you guys," I say, and I want to nope the heck out of there so fast, but not before Chadley kept trying to talk my ear off.
"So I really want to be in the FBI when I graduate, and then I want to be an Abercrombie & Fitch model, like on the shopping bags."
He literally sounded like a child. "Okay, Chadley, I'm sorry, but I really need to leave," I say. He walks me out to my car and just kind of stands there awkwardly expecting me to kiss him. But hell no. I jump in my Jeep, wave by, and back the hell out. He was just a really odd guy and I just wasn't interested at all. Now that you have the entire backstory, here's where it gets weird. So the next few days, I kept getting constant texts from Chadley. Every day it would always start as,
"Hey."
And for a little I said hey back because I didn't want to be rude to him. Thankfully I was going to Florida that week and I had a legit excuse as to why I couldn't see him. But literally every day he just kept sending me messages saying hey. And my responses just kept getting shorter and shorter every time. Pretty much to the point where I wasn't even responding anymore. But well, that didn't stop Chadley. He kept texting me every single day for almost 2 months after I stopped responding to him. Eventually, it was just getting so annoying and I decided to block his number. Then I started getting calls. Calls from random numbers, calls from private numbers, like non-stop. I picked up a few times, but no one was there. Then I would get another call and I would pick up and I could hear a man in the background. It was Chadley. I stopped answering my phone at that point. Then I kept getting Facebook messages from him.
"Hey."
That's all he would ever say, like repeatedly, just basically spamming me with haze. I was just so annoyed and I decided to block him again. That should be the last time I hear from him. Or so I thought. Well, wrong again. So literally an entire 2 years later and I get involved with another guy and things are going really great with us. One day, however, I get a message on Facebook while I was at work from a man named Chadley. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I open it and then it says,
"Hey stranger, how have you been?"
And of course I didn't respond. But before I could even block him, he then writes back,
"Okay, you little hoe, you could just be nice and say hi back to me. You don't have to be a total ass about it."
Like, whoa Chadley, what? And before I could even respond, I get a text to my phone. Can you guess what it said?
"Hey."
Right after he just freaked me out on Facebook. I wrote back, "Take a hint, bro, and leave me the hell alone already." To which I have no idea what his response was because I pretty much blocked him immediately afterwards. So thankfully, that's finally the end of my run-ins with Chadley. But it's so not the end of the story. So one day I was with my friend Claire and she had her Facebook Messenger pulled up, showing me a message that one of her exes sent to her, when I see none other than Chadley in her messages. And guess what this creepy freak messaged her?
"Hey, you look really familiar. Have we met before?"
I decided to ask her about it and what do you know? She said that he kept trying to get her to come over to his house, but she declined because he wasn't her type. Then a whole year later, I get a job as a general manager for a fine dining restaurant. One of my employees that I recognized upon hire was Chadley's ex-girlfriend's sister. After getting to know her a little bit better, my curiosity really got the best of me. I asked her what he was like. Guess what her response was? Apparently Chadley had met her sister on Facebook. After once again asking,
"Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?"
And when this girl agreed to date him, literally after a month, he was already obsessed with her. Apparently after they broke up, Chadley had actually stalked her for years afterwards. And he actually ended up tracking her down at her new boyfriend's house and then started an altercation with him. He was a complete freak. So creepy Facebook stalker Chadley, please don't message or contact me ever again for the rest of my life. Please. About 4 months ago, we moved into a new house out in the country. Since we previously lived in an apartment, that means that we needed to buy a new lawnmower. Instead of putting out $200 on a brand new lawnmower when we'd probably just have to move again in a couple of years, we decided instead to hire someone to cut our grass for us. We initially went with a guy that my fiance used to work with, but $65 every 2 weeks, well, starts to add up, and I was really looking for something cheaper. That brings me to Charles. Charles had posted in my Facebook classified that he was looking for some lawns that he could cut this weekend, and he had a reputable company, or so I thought. So I decided to send him a message on Facebook. Now, initially, Charles came off as pretty nice to me. He asked me for my address so that he could stop by and give me an estimate. After stopping by my house, he sent me a message that said,
"Damn, sweetheart, you got a big-ass porch."
It made me kind of uncomfortable, but I figured I was just overreacting, and I started planning when he could come out. I told him the days that I was off from work, but he assured me that I didn't have to be there when he would do the work. I told him the best time would probably be on a Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he messaged me.
"Are you home?"
I said no. 3 hours later,
"Are you home yet?"
I told him no yet again and that I won't be home until after 8. Charles then informed me that his tire had a flat and he would come tomorrow instead. Let's cut to Thursday, and first thing in the morning, he sends me a message.
"Will you be home today?"
I told him no. He messages me back a few hours later once again asking if I'm home. I told him, "No, I told you I wouldn't be home all day. Are you still coming out?" Then he tells me his truck broke down. He was sending me messages like,
"Please don't be upset with me, sweetheart."
At this point, I was getting really creeped out and pretty sick of his excuses, but I told him to just come tomorrow. It's now Friday and it's actually my day off, but I woke up and I left the house for the day. He messages me,
"Hey, I'm coming. You're off today, right?"
I told him yes, but that I wouldn't be home.
"When will you be home then?"
I told him I didn't know, and he messages me later saying,
"Sorry, babe. I was loading the equipment onto my truck and it then fell and broke. Maybe I can come tomorrow."
At this point, I was really creeped out and I just told him never mind and that I was gonna find someone else at this point. It's now Saturday and I get off work around 4 or 5 and I check my phone and I find multiple messages from him saying that he cut my grass and that I need to come home and give him the money. I told him no and that I would just send it through Cash App. He started getting really irate with me and saying that I needed to give him the money right now. I told him that I would give him the money once I got home and actually saw that the grass was cut for myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was honestly really worried that he was gonna be waiting at my house for me, so I decided to get a friend of mine to drive home right behind me. Luckily, he wasn't there. I sent him the money and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward 2 months later. I'm on the phone with my fiance as I drive to class and he tells me that he has to get off the phone because there's somebody walking down our driveway. I asked him what he meant and he said that there was some strange man walking around in our driveway as well as our front yard. After I got to class, he sent me a text telling me that it was some man who was just trying to promote his lawn business. Now, I didn't really think too much about this as it had been 2 months. But later that night, I then got home and I saw a business card that was laying on my counter. And it had the same exact name of the very same man who had been messaging me previously. I decided to call my fiance at work and I asked how the guy had been acting. He said that Charles seemed genuinely surprised that a man had come out and he asked if he lived alone. I then asked Mike if Charles had stopped at any of the other houses in the neighborhood, and then he replied with, "You know, now that I think about it, no. After he left our house, he just left." Mike said that Charles seemed really desperate to help around the house and he actually offered to cut the lawn, fix our porch, as well as remove any trash or scrap metal we had around the house. And then he even asked if we had pests such as bats in our attic or anything. That especially really freaked me out as we do have a bat problem, and I had previously posted about it on Facebook, so I'm guessing that's where he figured that out. Mike then said that what was really weird about Charles is how freaked out he was acting about the dog. He had heard our dog Max barking from inside and then started asking a lot of questions like,
Is he big? Does he stay inside or outside? Does he ever go outside or does he just always stay inside? How big is he? Is he nice?
Mike just chalked it up to him being scared of dogs. He gave him a brief tour of the outside of our house, and then Charles got in his truck and then left. That's when I told Mike that this was the same guy who had been messaging me earlier in the year, and then Mike began to really freak out. He said that Charles had asked a lot of really specific questions about who all lived here and how long they lived here, as well as where they specifically were at the time. He said that he tried to brush them off, but Charles seemed really insistent to know if Mike was the only one in the house. Before he left though, Mike specifically asked him if he had cut the lawn here before, and that maybe he was thinking of the last owners, but Charles just told him,
No, I've never cut your grass before. I just happened to be out this way and thought I'd promote my business.
The worst part? On that day, I had taken my fiance's car to work that day, which means that mine was in the driveway when Charles stopped by, meaning that he thought I was home alone when he stopped by. I didn't contact the police because I thought that I just might be overreacting about it. This all happened about 2 days ago, but hopefully I don't hear from him again. If I do, however, I'll definitely give an update. So this happened a few weeks back. As I'm sure most of you know, Facebook now has a dating component to it. I matched with this guy who seemed pretty chill to me. He was older than me. His profile had stated that he was 27 years old and I had just turned 23. But in my mind, 4 years age difference really isn't that big of a deal. We talked for about a day or two and decided that we would meet up for a drink to try and get a feel for each other in person. When we met face to face, he looked a little older than just 27. He had quite a bit of gray mixed into his facial hair, but I figured he might just be one of those people whose hair turns gray earlier in life. No big deal. We have a few drinks and then we chatted for a bit. He again states that he's 27 years old. He was really nice, but he wouldn't stop staring at me and feeding me compliments with every single sentence that came out of his mouth. I'm really awkward and I'm honestly pretty average looking. I was really flattered that he was saying those things to me, but naturally, it made me uncomfortable. Shortly after that, I decided it was time for me to head out, since I had to be up for work around 4:30 a.m. the next day. He walked me to my car and then we started discussing his car. It really caught my attention due to the fact that it was a 1970 Camaro. Then out of nowhere, he offered to take me a drive in it around 10 p.m. I declined due to the time and to the fact that I had only known this guy for less than 2 hours, and he wants me to get in his car and go on a random drive late at night? Yeah, that definitely wasn't going to happen. Something I really enjoy is watching documentaries about serial killers as well as reading creepy encounters and let's not meet stories. The last thing I'm about to do is get into a vehicle with an unfamiliar man who's then going to take me to God knows where. I know what kind of danger that can lead to, and I wasn't going to risk it. He was very persistent about it, but I wouldn't budge. So I just got in my car and left for my drive home, which was about 45 minutes long. By the time I arrived home, I received a ton of messages from him. Most of them saying how much he already missed me, wants to build a future with me, and how he's never fallen for anyone this fast during his 38 years of life. Then continuing with further compliments. And that's when my stomach then dropped. He had just stated that he was 38 years old. That's not what I was told at the bar or what his profile said. I replied to him, wondering whether or not it bothered him that he was 15 years older than I was. And I know it bothered me for damn sure. He states that it didn't and he prefers to date younger women around my age. I didn't respond and I just went to bed after that. When I woke up the next morning, I had multiple text messages and 5 missed calls and voicemails from that guy. I'm not going to lie, I straight up ghosted him after that. I blocked him on every form of social media that I had, as well as his phone number, which I guess is a crappy thing to do on my part, but he really creeped me out. He was super charming, but he was way too pushy, and he was giving me some real Ted Bundy vibes. So shout out to Facebook. I really want to thank you for introducing me to the creepiest person I've ever gone on a date with. So yeah, I think that's the last time I'll use Facebook for a date. About a month ago, I got a Facebook request from someone who I didn't recognize, but we had a lot of mutual friends, so I figured we must have met before and maybe I just didn't remember. Immediately, right after accepting his friend request, he then tried to video chat me on Facebook Messenger. I didn't respond, and after a few tries, he gave up. Then last week, I got a phone call from an unknown number, and I decided to answer it because I've been waiting to hear back for a possible job that I applied for. When I answered the phone, a very excited voice then said,
"Hey, how's it going?"
He also said my name. And well, the thing is, my name is fairly unusual and isn't pronounced the way it's spelled, so it was kinda weird that this guy knew my name. When I asked who it was though, it was the guy from Facebook. I told him that wasn't my name and that he had the wrong number. Then he started asking me a bunch of personal questions in a row, like where I lived and what school I went to. I kept telling him that I wasn't really comfortable with his questions, but he didn't stop, so I just hung up on him. He then called me yet again the next day, but as soon as I heard his voice, I just hung up. If he calls me again, I'm just going to block him. The creepiest part of all of this is that I don't really have any personal information on my Facebook page, and I definitely don't have my phone number there. I also don't think that any of our mutual friends would give out my number like that, so I really want to know how he got it. I don't know. The whole thing is just really creepy to me. When I was in my early 20s, I was very mentally unstable, lonely, and really desperate for friends. I've really struggled with binge eating, and it was really particularly bad at the time, with a lot of delivery and late-night fast food binges. One night, I decide to order a pizza, and this man delivers it, maybe in his mid to late 30s or early 40s, and I think I was about 19 or 20 at the time. We didn't really have any particularly engaging conversation. It was a normal pizza delivery driver kind of conversation. He may have complimented me on my piercings or hair at the time, or a shirt, but I don't really remember. This was like a decade ago. I do know though that there was nothing that indicated that I wanted to be friends with this guy, and it really was just simply a customer/driver interaction. I think it was a day or so later, and he adds me on Facebook. I really want to emphasize that this was days later, meaning he took my information home or noted it somewhere. It took me a minute to figure out who he was, and that's when I realized that he found me based on my order information. Being unstable, lonely, and really desperate for friends, I just decided to accept the friend request. He had left some really creepy, typical overly sexual compliments on some of my Facebook photos, but we never met or talked or really anything ever again, and I think I deleted him a few months later. I don't remember exactly, but I definitely realized that it was weird. So to the weird delivery driver that was almost twice my age at the time, and then decided after less than a 10-minute interaction to find me on Facebook days later, I hope I don't see you again, and I hope you didn't do this to anyone else. Or if you did, I really hope that they were smarter than I was and in a better place than me. I probably should have reported this to the company, but you know, hindsight 2020. I also want to note that I've had tons of delivery drivers creepily try to flirt with me since, and it's the worst. Please, just let me eat my greasy ass food in peace. As a former delivery driver myself, unless you have a dog, let's keep this brief and courteous, and always remember to tip your drivers. That is, unless they're a creep.